Clicks and Unilever's Tresemme product. And this isn't the first time Unilever, which owns the Tresemme brand, has found itself at the center of a race row. Let's get you a reminder. Back in 2017, it had to apologize over a Dove advert that showed a black woman turning into a white woman. Now that ad and the latest one, which labels black hair as dry and damaged and white hair as normal, raises questions about the organizational culture of that brand and how a reputational crisis like this one impacts employees. Let's get you some analysis now. We're joined by Organisational Culture Expert Andy Golding. Andy, you've built your career around helping companies get culture and employee experience right. So 2 racial fails in, 3 years? What does this say about Unilever?
Good morning, Michelle. It says a lot, but at the same time, it's hard to make assumptions without really understanding the detail of what's going on inside the company. All we can do really is ask questions. And the 2 big questions that I have, the 2 burning questions, are around the psychological safety in the organization and the awakeness in the organization. Now, psychological safety is this idea that you won't be ridiculed or punished or mocked for raising your hand, raising the alarm, for saying something that's out of lines. You know, you feel psychologically safe to think, to contribute, to have your say. And awakeness is this idea that we're switched on, we're tuned in, and we're adjusting to suit. And one has to wonder, a campaign like this, it passes under many eyes before it even leaves the building per se. It goes through many layers of approval, and one has to wonder if did not a single person who saw this before it went live, before it went off to clicks, did no one think this could be potentially problematic? This could really cause problems for us. And if anybody saw that, and I would almost be certain that somebody who saw this thought, this is not a good idea. This is going to cause problems. This is offensive. This is not okay in September of 2020. And I have to wonder if, somebody must have seen that and thought, this is problematic, but what got in the way of them sounding the alarm? And that's the culture conversation. If the culture is oppressive to a point where people aren't given the permission and they're not psychologically safe enough to say, hold on, stop, we have to stop and pause and think about this, then there's a big conversation to be had there.
Because there's one thing to have black faces in the company. It's quite another to have black voices who feel empowered to speak.
Absolutely, and that's exactly it. I see a lot of conversation at the moment around necessary and important diversity, inclusion, power, rank, privilege, training, and work that needs to be done. There is no question that we need massive transformation in our organizations, but we can have all the training in the world. If the culture that we're creating in the organization doesn't create permission for people to speak up, doesn't create psychological safety for people to speak up, and doesn't promote awakeness, this idea that everybody's switched on to what's going on in the world and we're all able to raise our hands and say, wait, stop, then, it's all the training in the world isn't going to solve the issue if people don't feel like they have the authorization and the permission to speak up and speak freely in their organizations.
So let's talk about Unilever for a moment. So Unilever owns Dove and it owns Tresemme. Dove was the 2017 ad of the black woman turning into a white woman, and then of course the latest Tresemme ad. How does the marketing team, like you said, how does this happen in 2020? How does the marketing team come up with an ad that portrays black people in one way and white people in the superior way to that first way?
I honestly don't know the answer to that, and one is slightly baffled by that. And all I can think is things move so fast. People aren't awake. People aren't paying attention. And there is no doubt, as I said, we need we need people to be checking their unconscious bias because it's unconscious. So we need to be training people to be more aware of these things. There is no doubt that there is bias that lives inside a lot of our organizations. It's the nature of the beast that is South Africa. But we need to be training people to be better aware of this, and making it okay to catch ourselves in this moment. I think so often business moves so fast, especially in a creative space. There's deadlines and there's clients and there's lots of different mediums that these things need to go out on. So it's so easy to get caught up in the rush of just get it done, that we actually stop paying attention to what is the impact. As soon as we click on this button to put this thing out and make it go live, what is the impact that it's going to have? And I think if we could just start to pause and say, hold on, what's the experience that we're about to create? First of all, what's the experience that we're creating for the people inside our business by putting things like this out there, by even, proposing adverts like this? What are we saying to the people inside our businesses? But also, what's the impact that it's going to have externally? And what is the impact that it's going to have on an already fragile nation?
If we take the discussion back just a bit further, Andy, it talks to the issue of whiteness as the norm, which is an issue we've discussed so many times over the decades. But it goes back to socialization, how people are brought up, and in fact how black people as well also in many ways think of whiteness as the norm.
Totally. And look, Michelle, that's very much in the realms of the diversity and inclusion professionals, and a diversity and inclusion practitioner, somebody who spends all of their time training and facilitating on this, would be definitely much better poised to answer a question like that than I am. From my perspective, it's the organizational culture creates the permissions. It's the culture that creates whether or not it's okay to do things. It creates what is and isn't okay, what we will and will not tolerate in this business. And the two need to work hand in hand. You need people to be checking their biases, checking their underlying opinions and default assumptions. But you also need a culture that makes it okay to change the way we've always done things, and a culture that makes it okay to call out things that we don't think are all right.
So I think it's fair to say, Clicks, Unilever, there is a reputational crisis in these companies. How does that reputational crisis filter down to the employees?
So pride is a massive factor. We talk about creating companies behaving awesomely, organizations to which the best people want to come, do come, choose to stay at, and while they work in there, they shoot the lights out. And these are companies that people are proud to say that they work at. When people are proud to say that they work at an organization, they show up with their discretionary effort, their best thinking, they care about the organization, they work in the organization, they work for the organization's best interests. But when pride falls apart, then it kind of becomes what we call a bare minimum transaction, where I'm showing up here so that I can get my salary, I'm doing the bare minimum because there's no emotional connection. And when pride breaks down, that emotional connection just obliterates.
It's going to be interesting to see in the coming days and no doubt weeks as well how these companies come to terms with this massive crisis that they're facing. Thank you so much for your time this morning. That's Andy Golding, who is also co-author of We Are Still Human, as we continue to unpack the reputational crisis at play in Unilever and certainly Clicks as well.